sympathize, man. I can never figure out those magic eye things either.
If stairs that creak and distant shrieking keep you up at night, take a midnight drive and you'll survive by the projector light. You're desperate for a taste of horror, hungry for the hunt, and the late night double feature's got a seat for you in front. Stabbing, slashing, gnashing fangs abound, all wrapped up in a cheap mask made of rubber. Beasts that feast on terror by the pound, so think before you ask for extra butter. The day is done, the time has come to lay your body down. The late night double feature starting now.
It's after midnight somewhere, so welcome to the Late Night Double Feature. On this show, we talk about 2 horror movies on a similar theme, no matter how vague that theme may be. I'm your host, Clive Sinclair, and tonight it's Shallow Grave Night. Let's talk about our first feature of the evening, I Bury the Living. I Bury the Living is a 1958 psychological thriller with a great title that could not possibly live up to its potential. That's not to say it's bad, it's just very, very misleading. Not made any better by this poster. Out of a time-rotted tomb crawls an unspeakable horror! Yeah, it's so unspeakable that they dare not ever have it in the movie. This supposed monster on here? It's just the Scottish Groundskeeper for a cemetery, but they whited out his eyes and made him look like a living statue or something. What the hell's dripping from his hands? Behold the terror of his hand sanitizer. I make fun of this poster, but the movie itself is actually pretty good, if a bit goofy at times. The titular I that is supposedly burying the living is this gentleman, Robert Kraft. He just got promoted at his job at a department store, becoming the new chairman of the board. Except for some reason, this department store owns a friggin' cemetery. And part of the bylaws of the chairman position is that he also has to manage the cemetery on an active basis. Just imagine if, you became a senior manager at a Target, and part of your job was also handling the day-to-day affairs of a funeral parlor that Target owned. Like Target-branded coffins or something. That's what this comes across like. There's a map of the cemetery in the main office that shows off every available plot, reserved plots, and which areas are currently occupied. A white pin indicates that the plot is reserved, black pin means someone's buried there, green pin for when they turn you to mulch. By accident, Robert puts a black pin into a spot that's been reserved by some friends of his, and they die shortly afterwards. It's a little weird, of course, and he's naturally suspicious about the weird coincidence, but he writes it off as just that, coincidence. If only to ease his mind about it, he decides to replace a random white pin with another black pin. And that person dies too. And that's the thrust of the movie. Does Robert actually have some sort of power over life and death? It can't just be the map itself. Tons of other people have stuck pins in this thing without any weird occurrences. Or the previous chairmen were all supervillains who used the map to kill people discreetly. And just one by one, he keeps killing people like this. The initial ones were accidents, but the later ones were done basically encouraged by others who tell him, No, this is just ridiculous superstition. Here, stick my pin and nothing will happen. Oh no, I'm dead now. You'd think after the second time it happened, he would just go, No siree, not gonna mention this, just gonna be very, very careful about the pins in the future. But nope, just tell everybody about it and up the body count. To be fair to Robert, though, it's not just a matter of guilt. He has a sense of deja vu out at the cemetery walking around, as if he's really familiar with the atmosphere of a graveyard.
I never knew what it was. It's the sound of a name being cut into a headstone.
He feels like he's experienced it all in dreams his whole life. It's a chilling idea that one could have power over life and death their whole existence and not even realize it. How many friends or family has one accidentally killed with a passing thought or a nightmare? On the other hand, if you gave this guy a death note, he'd probably kill half the town before he convinced anyone of its validity. It does get a little repetitive at points because, like I said, it's just the same thing over and over. People being unconvinced of this despite the rising death toll, while he insists that something weird is happening. Eventually, though, he does convince the cops that this might be true, and they conduct an experiment. One of the people reserving a cemetery plot is currently in France. He'll stick the pin in, and if somehow he manages to kill him despite being across an ocean, they'll be convinced. While waiting for word, in a fit of madness, he decides that if he has power over death, maybe he has power over life, too, and replaces all the people who have been killed so far with white pins. And that same madness apparently making him forget, oh right, they'll come back to life in their coffins that are buried. Or maybe he doesn't, since he flees out to their graves that well-lit night, and finds their coffins unburied and a few of their tombstones knocked over. Well, I don't know about the previous chairman, but I'm pretty sure that Robert is now a supervillain with an army of zombies. This bit is also a little slow because after the third or fourth tombstone, we get the idea, but the movie has to show every single one. There's even a spot where his coat gets caught on a tombstone and he has to abandon it. Is that an outtake they left in? Or was that planned for, like scene continuity later? Returning to the office without the coat, he grabs a gun and gets ready to shoot himself in despair. Until he finally gets word that indeed the guy in France is dead. Then the next dude comes along and says, look, this doesn't prove anything. Now, if your magic powers killed this alien we discovered on another planet, then I'll be convinced. What's funny is that this is actually the clearest phone conversation we've had in the movie. There are several times where conversations are happening on the phone, and I get the impression they were supposed to loop in the phone dialogue later while someone speaks it off screen, but they never do, so we have bits of dialogue where we can barely, if at all, hear what the other person on the phone was saying. Yet there are still dramatic music stings as if we could hear what the hell they're saying. I mean, it was a really dramatic scene when the police called him and said, The groundskeeper enters, covered in dirt, and reveals that he was actually the one who murdered everyone, wanting revenge for being forced to retire, even with a full pension, since he loved working here and thought it gave his life purpose. You know, you could have just asked them to let you keep your job. He even unburied those corpses to try to drive Robert to suicide. Big presumption that he wouldn't just jump for joy and yell, "Yay, I can undo all the terrible things I've done." Thing is, Robert's not actually convinced of this explanation. The police officer had suggested that some people just have some innate power, the ability to make things happen. So in this case, especially in light of the guy in France dying, he thinks the power just made the groundskeeper kill them. It's not helped by the fact that the caretaker can hear the tapping of the hammer on the headstones like him. It's driving him mad. Not helped in turn by the implication that all the people who have been killed are now alive again too. But they aren't. As the caretaker dies from a heart attack or shock or whatever, the police arrive and reveal that they suspected he was the killer, but needed to draw him out. The guy in France is fine, and the phone call was a fake. It's a bit of a cop-out ending, but it does work. The movie feels like an extended episode of The Twilight Zone, and I mean that in a good way. Psychological tension, questions over power beyond our understanding, and some twists and turns along the way. It's just the one problem is that the title and premise are really a fake-out. I Bury the Living has very different connotations than what actually plays out. Hell, a lot of this movie seems built around tricking the audience. Remember the poster? Still waiting for an unspeakable horror to crawl out of a time-rotted tomb. Oh hey, you thought the poster was misleading? Check out this opening text. Science has learned that man possesses powers which go beyond the boundaries of the natural. True that. You ever seen a man eat 10 McRibs in 5 minutes? I have. This is the story of one confronted by such strange forces within himself. The hell are they talking about? Robert doesn't have any powers. You called your movie I Bury the Living. You don't have to try to sell us on him having magic powers so hard in the beginning when the movie contradicts that in the end. I get it, it's a what-if kind of thing, exploring the possibility of what's going through his mind psychologically. I mean, it's the entire plot, but you undermine it by having the ending go, wait, nothing to worry about, false alarm. But who am I kidding? The movie was made in 1958. They weren't exactly banking on people rewatching the movie multiple times in the future on home video or something. If you saw the film in theaters, you'd probably have forgotten the opening crawl by the time the movie ended. I Bury the Living is a good movie. Just don't think too hard about some of the stuff around the ending or it kind of falls apart. This one's all about the journey, and a hell of a journey it is. It's also in the public domain, so you can easily get a copy anywhere, though there is a Blu-ray with the best quality available from Shout Factory. If you can get into it, I recommend it as a pretty fun feature with some creepy atmosphere. But if you really want strong atmosphere with some actual supernatural shenanigans, let's talk about our second feature, The Autopsy of Jane Doe. This one comes to us from Andre Ovredal, more famously known for the found footage movie Troll Hunter, as well as Scary Stories to Tell in the Dark. The police find an unknown woman's body half buried in the basement of a house in Virginia. However, she ain't the only body. The place was the site of an entire family murdered. Gunshots, stabs, the whole place is just covered in blood and viscera. To add to the mystery, there's no evidence of anyone breaking into the place. If anything, the family was trying to break out. Not surprising, if I found a dead body in this basement I'm in, I would probably try to get the hell out of there too. As the title suggests, the story is about an autopsy. The body is brought to a father and son team that run a coroner's office in the town, Tommy and Austin respectively. The police chief wants the cause of death that night, so they have something to give to the press. Everything is normal at first. Well, as normal as an autopsy is. They examine the body thoroughly, discover some oddities in the injuries, and speculate about the cause of those injuries.
Everybody has a secret. Some just hide them better than others.
However, that secret gets weirder and weirder as it goes on. From her eyes being hazy, which shouldn't happen for days after death, yet there's no rigor mortis. Her wrists and ankles are broken, yet there's no outward sign of that on her skin. She has blackened lungs, but the extent of damage would mean third-degree burns. When they open her up, they find strange writing on the inside of her skin. The deeper they go in the autopsy, the more a storm brews outside, and the radio starts playing.
So let the sun shine in.
Oh, okay, that was a relief. I was worried it was going to start playing We've Only Just Begun. Inside of her intestines, they find a few things of interest, but most importantly, a shroud with strange symbols and writing. Soon after, all the lights explode and the dead bodies that were in their freezers disappear. At that point, they decide that they must be dedicated to their work. They're professionals, after all. They need to stay and finish this autopsy, come hell or high water.
Let's get the fuck out of here.
Oh, how I do love not people being stupid in a horror movie. Unfortunately, whatever terrible thing they've unleashed has seemingly sealed them in. The elevator up isn't working, the storm cellar entrance seems blocked off by a fallen tree, and they soon find themselves being stalked by the dead bodies in the morgue. Look, bodies! You're all gonna get an autopsy soon! Don't be so impatient! The movie is excellent about setup and payoff. Earlier in the film, they established the old practice of coroners tying a bell to a body's toe, just in case a person was actually comatose and not dead. And naturally, our heroes hear that bell ringing when the corpses make their attack. It is as terrifying as you imagine it would be. Well, let's get back to that whole characters not being stupid thing. Realizing that whatever's happening is a result of that body, they try to burn it. Unfortunately, whatever the corpse is makes the fire spread and they're forced to put it out. And the body itself has no more damage than what we'd already seen. Their only chance is to finish the autopsy and try to determine what the hell is going on with Jane Doe. My guess? Scottish Groundskeeper is just trying to mess with them. Based on all the evidence they gathered, they realized that she was a victim of the Salem witch trials. They acknowledged that there were no real witches there in history, just innocent people accusing each other of bull, But given the ritual that was done to Jane Doe, they speculate that they may have inadvertently created the very thing they wanted to destroy. Jane Doe was made into some kind of witch who now torments anyone around her as revenge for what happened to her. Tommy attempts to sacrifice himself to her, offering to take on all her pain and torment if she'll spare Austin. It seems to work, too, as her body starts healing up and he takes on all the injuries. Unfortunately, all that work got undone when she took up smoking shortly afterwards. Shame, really. No, rather, not fully understanding all this, Tommy asks Austin to kill him because of all the pain he's in. And the curse hadn't really finished running its course, so poor Austin is killed next, hearing his would-be rescuers singing, "Open up your heart and let the sun shine in." Jane Doe needs a better shuffle function on her MP3 player. This is a fantastic movie. While it can probably be a bit uncomfortable if you're not a gorehound, since, you know, there's a full-on autopsy in there. They even take a sample of her brain. Oh, yeah, just slap the top of her skull back on there like a hat. Good as new. It's still a remarkably tense and fascinating movie with a great mystery and phenomenal atmosphere, aided by fantastic effects and cinematography. For most of the movie, Jane Doe is not a dummy or anything. It's an actress named Olwen Kelly. Overdahl thought that doing the close-up shots with something fake would have, well, not looked real. I hope he didn't feel that way when they set the body on fire. And if you haven't seen it before, don't assume that my plot recap fully captures the movie or makes the mystery less compelling because you know the answer. This is a great film to re-watch as well, if only for how tense it gets as things go on, and once again, set up and payoff for it all. There's also character development between Tommy and Austin, a very believable dynamic that doesn't feel forced or unconvincing. The emotional core of the film is there and plays out well. Hell, if I had to complain about anything, the fact that both die feels unrewarding because of that character development. But at the same time, the journey throughout is really what's more important and all the more satisfying. And that's it for tonight's double feature. And hopefully you'll be seeing a lot more of them in the future. I'm Clive Sinclair, and until next time, just remember, it's after midnight somewhere. So watch something appropriate this late in the night.
Bethy, don't be that way. What's the trouble?
How would you like to get a cemetery plot for a wedding gift?
Hello my friends, please take a moment to like this video, subscribe to the channel, and click the bell for notifications on new video releases. If you'd like to support future videos, you can check out my Patreon or purchase a t-shirt via Teespring or Shark Robot. Thanks for watching!